Lux On Demand family. I am Pastor Andy, also known as Chino Mage, and I am super excited to welcome you to our YouTube channel. Now, normally we do live church services every single Wednesday night over at twitch.tv/Lux Digital Church, starting at 8:30 p.m. EST. It's a whole lot of fun getting the chance to talk with you live and really interact with you there. But our church mainly gathers on Discord, and you'll see the link below and in all of our profiles. We'd love to get the chance to hang out with you week in and week out. But for now, sit back and relax as we get ready for a new talk here on YouTube.
Well, hello and welcome to Lux Digital Church. My name is Mark. I'm the lead pastor here at Lux, and if you're joining us for the first time, I want to thank you for joining in. Say hello in the chat. Drop a follow on the channel so that we know that you're out there and we can say hello and welcome you into the family. And if you're joining us later on as part of our on-demand family, well, then welcome as well. We're really glad to have you. Thanks for stopping by, and come and join us in our Discord community, in our server. That's really where our church, their heartbeat is, and we would love to have you join us. You can grab the link to that by hitting !Discord in the chat, or by grabbing the link in the description of this video or podcast episode, or if you're watching on VOD, in the panels directly below us. Thanks for being here tonight. We are at the start of our Easter series. Realistically, we kind of started this past Sunday at the gathering, but which I'll talk about in just a moment. But really tonight, we're beginning our very, we're beginning our very first, I just said, oh, hello, out of nowhere, Whitbite. Oh, hello, because they said, oh, hello, Mark. Hello, Aaron. We started it kind of back there, but tonight is really the official start of our very first ever sort of holiday event. If you don't know this, we're in a year-long emphasis called Year of the Forge right now, and going along with sort of like seasonal events that happen inside of some of our favorite games, we also have seasonal holiday events here at Lux. And so over these 10 days, we have been celebrating our first ever seasonal event, Ash and Ember, as we celebrate Easter together. I have a question for you tonight. Have you ever been at a time in life when everything seems to break? You ever had a time in life? Throw a 5 in chat. By the way, if you're new, throwing a 5 in chat is just like raising your hand. You can't raise your hand here at Lux because we're digital, but a 5 in chat shows that you're raising your hand, right? Okay, yeah, Whitbite says now, Wisconsin saith treasure. Yeah, some people, Forever Eden saying absolutely. Steven, Ice, Vindis, Mando. Well, Mando, it's good to see you tonight, dude. Hope you're doing well, man. Mrs. Niftikal, if you mean the last 6 months of my life, listen, Puddle Jam says yes. There's been times. Fox says yes. Grace, Starsheep, Eufer, Zeph. Listen, and I know what that can mean, right? So for some of us, everything falling apart can be quite dramatic. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Sheebs in the chat. Sheebs, we love you, bro. If you guys didn't know, Sheebs was the drummer tonight in tonight's worship video. It can be quite dramatic, but I think there's also times in life when it just seems like a lot of physical things around you all break at the same time. Like if you ever had a day when it was like, man, you like threw on a backpack and the strap broke and you walked out your door and you dropped your phone and cracked the screen like within the same 15 minutes of one another. I think for us in our life, it always seems like it is like the plague of appliances, right? And it's like if the dryer goes down, right? And it's like, okay, the dryer's broken. And then it's almost like this, like we're holding our breath because we know it's the fridge or the oven or the car or something else is going to break, right? If one thing goes down, we know that we're not just replacing one thing. It always seems to come in triplets, right? And it can be small things or it can be big things. I've had seasons where it was just like, man, every single sock that I put on my foot has a hole in it right now. That's actually happening because of the puppy currently, right? But it just seems like things sort of all fall apart or like to all fall apart at the same time. This is true of like losing loved ones too, right? Like I remember as a kid, my parents telling me deaths come in threes, which is a little morbid to think, right? But like it almost has always happened, right? When I lose someone who's close to me, I'm probably going to lose at least one, maybe, and I might go years without going to a funeral. And then it seems like I'm at 2 or 3 of them back to back to back. It just seems like life goes that way. Sometimes other things, they go wrong, right? Everything seems to fall apart. Maybe a bunch of our relationships go belly up and go bad all around the same time, right? Maybe one bad decision or one negative event sort of has a cascading effect throughout our life, and it seems like a bunch of other things are also always going down. Serenity Quest in healthcare, I can attest to this. Serenity Quest 1. Welcome in. Can some people say some welcomes? Oh, look at that. Faye giving some hugs. Chino giving a welcome. We got Druzy welcoming. Just some people welcome in Serenity Quest tonight. We're really glad to have you here with us. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to say hello and jumping in. Guiding Lantern. Dr. Level Up, it's good to see you tonight, man. But I think in life, there are moments when everything seems to go wrong. And tonight, we're going to look at exactly that story. When everything seems to fall apart. And this is the Ash portion of our story. And I have to be really careful. Like, I was practicing this, and I just realized the more I say the word Ash, the more I accidentally almost say a word I shouldn't say. So I got to be really careful. Digital Keegan, what's up? Welcome in. Great worship as always. Glad to have you with us here, Digital Keegan. I don't think I've ever seen your name before. Maybe you changed your name. We're really glad to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But tonight, that's really what we're going to dive into, because the first half of the Easter story is really about everything going wrong. Now, we dove into this as we looked at Palm Sunday this past week at the gathering. And if you've never been to the gathering before, my goodness, you need to show up. It's a more intimate service that we do on the last Sunday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern in our Discord server. And we have half the time where we're having sort of a more liturgical service experience. And then the other half of the time, we're breaking into community groups. We're taking the Lord's Supper together. We're praying for one another. We're checking in on one another. It is a great time to just be the church family. And so if you call Lux your home, make the gathering a priority on the last Sunday of each month. But this last Sunday, we took a look at a high-level view, kind of the 10,000-foot view of 3 large groups of people on the triumphal entry on Palm Sunday that really misunderstood who Jesus was. And if I don't have a background in the church, you know what Palm Sunday is? It was just the Sunday before Easter. Jesus, along with his disciples, showed up with a massive crowd of people into the streets of ancient Jerusalem. And when he did, people shouted, "Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest." Then they threw down palm branches in their coats and they welcomed him like a king. But when he came in, he arrived on a donkey, and there was 3 distinct groups of people that really misunderstood what Jesus was about. We had the religious leaders who kind of saw him as an uncontrollable X factor, somebody who could spark a rebellion if he so wanted to. And the religious leaders knew firsthand how dangerous the Roman Empire was. It had conquered them and ruled in Jerusalem at the time. They knew that if a rebellion started during Passover, which was happening just a couple of days after that, and the streets of Jerusalem were packed and crowded with people traveling in for Passover. We're going to talk about that more here in just a minute. What is Passover? The people that were coming into the city, they knew that if a rebellion started, that the Romans would absolutely stomp it out and totally destroy the city and topple the temple. And so for the religious leaders, they were envious of Jesus, but they didn't understand his purpose. They thought he was here for bad reasons. The crowd itself thought that he was a political and military leader. They thought he was overthrowing the Romans and bringing back Israel to its heyday, to its glory during the time of King David. They were calling him the son of David, meaning that he was going to sit on the throne of David and reestablish the kingdom of Israel. The Jews and the crowds oftentimes thought that he was a religious and political leader. The Romans at the time looked at him confused as well, viewing him as a threat, trying to keep the peace during one of the most tense political and cultural moments in Israel's time under captivity underneath the Roman authority. They saw Jesus as somebody who could rally people by the thousands and had performed many miraculous works, and they were afraid that that might be just enough to light a spark to start a rebellion or a riot in the city. All in all, everybody misunderstood who Jesus was, and it totally set the stage for what we're going to talk about tonight. Everything going from good at the triumphal entry to turning to ash and falling apart. Everything going wrong in the days to come. Oh, Mount Moriah, it's good to see you. Welcome in. We're so glad to have you here with us. Welcome back to church. Thanks for being here. By the way, if you have questions, yes, the gathering is awesome, Druzy says. Make sure that you're here. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. If I don't grab it, somebody from our team on the commands team, King Tauntaun or Boots or Temp or Druzy will pick it up for me, okay? So we started off with Jesus coming into the city, realizing that he didn't come to overthrow the Romans, but he came for the heart of his people. He shows up at the temple and he overthrows tables. We pick up tonight where we left off at the gathering with the Last Supper. Shortly after Jesus enters the city of Jerusalem, he comes down into the city from the Mount of Olives where he had been staying, and he tells his disciples to prepare for the Passover meal. This is happening on Thursday night. They're going to gather in an upper room. And the Passover was this incredibly sacred holiday to the ancient Jews, and still is today. It was the one time that they gathered each year, and over the course of 7 to 8 days, they celebrated the moment that the angel of death, the final plague that Moses brought on the Egyptians, passed over their homes and killed the firstborn male of each household in Egypt, but spared any of the Israelites that spread the blood of a lamb on their doorposts and on their door frame. And so the Jews would gather once a year to tell this sacred story. And it was told through unleavened bread and a lamb shank and bitter greens that were served through wine. And throughout the ceremony and throughout this very beautiful ritualistic meal, they would tell the story of when God showed up for them and ultimately freed them after 400 years of slavery in the land of Egypt. And as they're gathered and they're celebrating the sacred meal, and the city is absolutely packed with people who've traveled in with Passover, Jesus says this in the beginning of the meal, and it totally throws everybody off. He says this: when it was evening, Jesus sat down at the table with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me. This must have shocked them. Why would Jesus say that? They had all been faithful and loyal. He's gathered, there's thousands of people that are following Jesus at this point, hundreds who are close to him, but there's just the 12 that he's with in the upper room. And he's gathered there with his 12 chosen disciples, his inner circle. He tells them, somebody here is going to betray me. It's the first sign that all of their loyalty, that all of their aspirations, that all of this camaraderie and brotherhood and loyalty that they've developed is going to burn up. The first image that everything they think is going to happen isn't going to happen, that everything is going to go wrong. They finish the meal, they sing a song, and they head for the Mount of Olives. Now, to do this, they're on Mount Zion. They have to cross through the valley between there and the Mount of Olives. These are two mountains, hillsides really, sitting right across from one another. And on the Mount of Olives, it overlooks the city of Jerusalem and Temple Mount, where the city, or the temple of Solomon would have stood. And on the way, he begins to talk to them about how their loyalty now, all of them, not only will one of them betray him, but all of their loyalty to him is about to falter. He says this in Matthew chapter 26. On the way, Jesus told them, tonight, all of you will desert me. Like, what a gut punch. For the scriptures say, God will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there. Peter declared, even if everyone else deserts you, I will never desert you. Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, Peter, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. No, Peter insisted, even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you. And all of the other disciples vowed the same. Matthew 26, 31 through 35, the New Living Translation. All this talk about rebellion and thrones and kingdoms that the disciples and Jesus' followers have been conversing about who's going to sit on Jesus' right and left. Man, all of the disciples still, you can see that their loyalty split. They still misunderstand who Jesus was. Yeah, the crowds were confused about him. The religious leaders, the Romans didn't know what to think. But it's just showing us as we bore down smaller and smaller in this narrative and story, even his closest disciples, even his chosen 12, still had in their mind, what's up, Slife? Still had in their mind that Jesus was one day going to overthrow the Roman authority. All of them still have in their mind that this is what's going to happen. And they're rallying themselves, getting ready. We're never going to betray you. Peter, as passionate as he is, swears, God, I'd rather die, Rabbi, than turn my back on you. There's no way that I would ever betray you. Jesus walks with them to the top of the Mount of Olives, and he heads in to a small grove of olive trees called Gethsemane. And there he tells his followers to wait and to pray as he goes off by himself to pray. And even his closest three amongst the 12, Peter, James, and John, cannot stay awake. And we're still drilling down in further, saying the confusion about the moment is here. Jesus knows what's about to happen, but even his closest friends have no idea. This sense of being alone, of everything falling apart around him, begins to bear down on us as we read the story, as Jesus is now isolated and alone, crying out to God in desperation inside the garden. Then the spark is lit. The thing that everybody thought or hoped wouldn't happen happens. And Judas arrives with a crowd of people to arrest Jesus. Now, it's interesting, in a story just before this one, Jesus tells them to get swords. They say, we have 3 of them. And Jesus is like, yo, that's enough. Plenty of swords. You don't need any more. And one of those swords is strapped to the most zealous of Jesus' followers, Peter. And everybody shows up, and Peter's like, this is the moment of pure misunderstanding. Judas comes up and kisses Jesus on the cheek. It's finally revealed who has betrayed him. Everything begins going wrong. Everything is escalating. Everything is beginning to fall apart. And Peter sees, this is my time. This is the spark for the rebellion that we've been dreaming about and getting rid of the Romans all this time. And so he pulls the sword off his hip that Jesus had told him to carry with him, and he slashes out against the men who are trying to arrest Jesus. And the dude tries to dodge out of the way, and it misses his head, but it catches his ear and cleaves it off. And you would think, okay, like this is it. Like Peter might be martyred. Jesus might be martyred. Like things might go bad here, but this is what we needed. This is going to cause the people to rise up. They're going to kill this prophet that's come from Nazareth. His death, our deaths might be the thing. If God's not on our side, our deaths might be the thing, or we might be able to beat these guys back. This is the beginning of the end. Imagine the anticipation in the disciples. Imagine the nerves. Peter thinks, I finally did it. He said I would betray him, but when the people came, I didn't betray anybody. I pulled out my sword and I chopped off that dude's ear. Peter thinks, man, I've done everything right. But Jesus doesn't call for a fight. He doesn't rally the troops. In fact, he stops the fighting. He picks up the ear and pop, puts it back on the dude's head. And then instead of fighting back, he peacefully and quietly goes with his accusers and is arrested. And in that moment, when Jesus does the exact opposite thing that everybody thought he would do, his disciples flee and run from him. Everything he said would happen, happens. They abandon him. Everything goes to ash. Then Jesus says this to the crowd in Matthew chapter 26. Then Jesus said to the crowd, am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come at me with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. At that point, all of the disciples deserted him and fled. Jesus is drugged before the religious leaders at Caiaphas's house. I was actually there 2011 and 2012. I got to put my hands in the place that would have held the chains and the walls that Jesus would have been chained to as he was being beaten, spit on, and tried. They bring false witnesses in front of them because the truth is they want him dead. Here's the problem. Jews aren't allowed to kill people. They're not allowed to execute anyone. It's only the Romans that are allowed to do that. And there's a lot of people that have rallied to Jesus' side. They don't need just one reason to kill him. They need 2. They need a religious reason because the Jews are bound to a religious law. If they can get him to confess or admit to something, or they can pin him down with something to show that he's broken their law or committed blasphemy, they can have a reason to kill him. They also need a legal reason to kill him because they need to be able to bring him before the Romans if they want him properly executed without getting in trouble for it. And they find exactly the things. This man who's the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, their Messiah and Savior, they completely misunderstand who he is, everything turning to ash. And they pin two charges to him. The first, he claims to be the Son of God. A good enough religious reason for the Jews to rally behind the call for crucifixion. Next, he said that he calls himself the King of the Jews. At least people were calling him that. It might not be a good enough reason for an execution, but it's certainly a good enough reason to put pressure on Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Enough to put pressure on him to have Jesus executed. And so, Jesus is ready to go before Pilate. And at the same time, we see Peter. All of the other disciples had abandoned Jesus, fulfilled exactly what he said. He was completely alone, except for Peter. Peter gets a bad rap, but he's the only one who follows at a distance as the mob arrests Jesus and brings him to Caiaphas' house. He's the only one who sneaks into the courtyard and warms himself by the fire to get within earshot of the accusations being made about his rabbi. But once he's in there, he gets talked down by a little girl who accuses him of being one of the followers of Jesus from Galilee. And that night he denies 3 times even knowing him. It says this in Matthew 26, suddenly Jesus' words flash through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And he went away weeping bitterly. Not even Peter sticks around. Even he abandons Jesus. Then Jesus finds himself before Pilate, and Pilate cannot find a thing wrong with him. Everything's falling apart. Everything's escalating so quickly. Pilate wants to let him go. In fact, he goes so far as to try to convince the religious leaders to pull down their mob by offering them someone else in exchange. At Passover, he would free a convicted criminal or a prisoner. And he says, hey, instead of Jesus, how about I free Jesus? Or I could free this other guy named Barabbas. Now, Barabbas was an insurrectionist and a murderer. And you might think that the Jews wanted him on their side. But Barabbas is exactly the type of person that they're trying to avoid being in the streets of Jerusalem during Passover. He's exactly the type of person that could start something that would turn into a fire that wouldn't stop, that would result in the Romans burning the city to the ground. But the crowd's whipped up to a frenzy, and they keep shouting, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And Pilate knows that Jesus is innocent, but the death of one man to him, a non-Roman citizen, is a lot easier than risking keeping him alive. And so Pilate washes his hands of him. And it says this in Matthew 27:26. So Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip and then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. This wasn't supposed to happen. Everything had gone wrong so fast. Jesus was supposed to save them, not be crucified. He was supposed to lead them, not be arrested. He was supposed to fight back, not give in. He was supposed to defend himself. He wasn't supposed to stand there silently as false accusations were brought against him and he was judged unfairly. Yet everything fell apart. It's going to bring me to a key statement for tonight because I forgot to go to it earlier, but I think it's just as important right now. It's the one thing that brings this message together, and it's this. Before the cross becomes something that saves us, it reveals something about us. You see, this story isn't just the story of what happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago. It is certainly that. But this story is also a mirror for us to look in. It's a look into our own hearts as we approach Easter morning. As everything in Jesus' life turned to ash, as everything fell apart, as everything went from bad to worse over the course of a couple of days, and soon he's abandoned, beaten, and sentenced to death, so too we come to the cross of Jesus on Easter with a lot of burnt up stuff. Our life also in it possesses a lot of ash. And if on Sunday morning we looked at the grand scheme of the groups around him, tonight we're going to focus in and see ourselves in the disciples and in Peter and in Judas and in Pilate. The disciples abandoned Jesus. They can't stay awake in the garden. They flee when he does something that they don't expect. They had Jesus in a box. He was a political leader, someone they could rally behind, somebody that would lead a bloody coup. And when he surrendered himself willingly, they didn't know what to think about him. And they all abandoned him. These people that he had invested his life in, that had followed him everywhere, that just less than a week ago were rallied behind him, willing to die as they came into the streets of Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. All of the events that have happened this week as Jesus has been teaching in the temple, they all come to a head in Gethsemane, and all of his disciples run. And the truth is, I can see myself in that. Maybe you can see yourself. Maybe you can see how easy it is to say one thing and live a different way. Maybe in the simplest of ways, you have a hard time staying awake when you pray too. Maybe you can see that human side of you. Perhaps you can relate to what it feels like when Jesus doesn't come through in the way you thought he was going to come through for you. When he doesn't show up when somebody's sick, when he doesn't heal somebody that you thought he was going to heal. When you do lose something precious to you. When that job doesn't seem to line up. When you don't understand what God's doing, when he's confusing to you, when Jesus doesn't fit inside your box. It's easy to go to other things, to run from him, to look for identity in a game, or to look for identity in a role at your job or at your church or in your family. It's easy to run from him and to find all the things we're supposed to find in him in other things in this world. It's easy to flee when Jesus doesn't do what we expected him to do. I think we're all naturally prone to doubt and to turn away when Jesus isn't exactly what we thought he was going to be, when we've misunderstood. Think about Peter. Peter in all of his passion and in his zealous heart, the kid who walked on water, right, out to Jesus, like the guy who swore, I would never betray you, the guy carrying the sword, right? Like Peter steps up. He has all the passion and all of the zeal, and the dude is absolutely ready to go. And I think a lot of times in life, we think faith is going to come up in these like really big moments, right? These climactic moments where we have to draw the sword. But just like the disciples, Jesus didn't do what Peter expected. It threw him so far off. He was still trying to stay committed to Jesus, but it wasn't in the big moment that that Peter found failure. It was in the small moment with a little girl by a fire in a courtyard. Our failures also usually don't come in when it's on the line and it feels like a big moment. It comes in the still, small moments when we don't think anyone will see. When we're not the center of attention. When there's no eyes looking. When we're tired and afraid and a little self-conscious, and we're feeling a little weak. When we don't want to step in to that hard conversation, when we're afraid of what someone might think. When we're afraid that bringing up our faith or claiming Jesus might mean confrontation. It's in those moments that we fail too. Maybe we don't deny Jesus, but we also don't claim him. Sometimes we're prone to fail in those same small moments of fear and loneliness as well. I don't think any of us want to identify with Judas, but honestly, I think he's the easiest one to identify with. Just to be honest. Let me tell you why. Judas was the money collector. He was the guy who kept the bank account. He'd been skimming off the top for a while. Judas betrays Jesus for a sack of silver coins. And to be honest with you, I don't think that Judas thought that it was going to escalate and get as bad as it did. I think he thought maybe Jesus was going to get a slap on the wrist, maybe reprimanded by the religious leaders, maybe called in and yelled at by Pilate, maybe flogged a little bit, maybe beaten with some sticks. But I don't think he thought Jesus was going to be crucified. Because when Jesus is sentenced to death and crucifixion, Judas hangs himself in response. He throws the money back. He regrets everything that he had done. But Judas is blinded by a second God. And the blindness that he gets from the second God makes him miss what the true intentions of the religious leaders really were in their desire to murder Jesus. You see, Judas's failure wasn't just in accepting some silver coins. It started well before that when he noticed how much money was piling up in the disciples' bank account, and he thought he could skim off a little bit to make himself a little bit happier and a little bit more comfortable. Judas's failure started months before that, probably, when the idol of wealth or something else had risen up in his life to the point that it had taken priority over his brothers and sisters, over the other disciples, over Jesus himself. And I think that's something we can all relate to. Yeah, we might not be selling people out for murder or crucifixion for a bag of silver coins, but we all have times when different things rival Jesus in our lives. When money becomes the chief temptation, when we'd rather be a little bit more comfortable than have people come to know Jesus, whenever just eking out a little bit more for ourselves becomes the focus of our hearts instead of what God wants for us. Judas's main sin wasn't the sin of betrayal, it was idolatry. Money became the rival God in his heart. And I think all of us can relate to rival gods creeping up in us. I think we can all see the ash in our own life through the disciples, and we can see it through Peter, and we can see it through Judas. When we know it's hard to follow through with the things we say we're going to do, and it's easy to walk away from Christ, to get frustrated and angry whenever things don't turn out the way we want them to. We know that it's easy to talk a big game and hard to follow through. We know it's easy to be faithful in the big moments, but it's hard in the still small moments when we think no one's listening. We all know it's easy for other things to creep up in our life and take the place of Jesus in our hearts. But then there's Pilate. Maybe someone that no one wants to identify with. The governor over Jerusalem. Jesus is brought before him, and when Jesus comes before him, a crowd begins pressuring Pilate to have him executed. Pilate washes his hands as though he can stay on the sidelines and remain neutral and not make a decision. And you might be here tonight thinking exactly the same thing. You stumbled into the stream because somebody invited you here. You stumbled into the stream because you were watching something on Twitch and you were like, this is weird. There's 100-some people inside this live stream and it's called a church. I'm going to check it out and see if it's legit. Or maybe you thought, I'm going to check it out and see how ridiculous it is. But you're coming up on another Easter season and you're reminded of the fact that people have told you before that Jesus is the one and only way to life. And every single time you've heard about Jesus, you've kept him on the sidelines. You've washed your hands of him. You've stayed neutral. But here's the thing, not making a decision is still making a decision. No one looks back on Pilate and thinks that he remained neutral. Everybody knows he made a choice. And this Easter, I'm begging you to make it different. Jesus isn't just asking Pilate to make a choice on his execution. It's also a question for us, for you and me, and for our hearts today. Will we keep Jesus and try to stay on the sidelines? Are you going to try to keep him at arm's length again? Are you going to try to wash your hands of him and remain neutral? You know, a lot of people say that Jesus was just a great teacher. He was a prophet, someone enlightened. Jesus doesn't really leave that option for us. He didn't claim to be a good teacher. He claimed to be the Son of God. He didn't claim to point to truth. He claimed to be truth. Someone who makes those type of statements is either insane, evil, or exactly what he said he was. What if Jesus was indeed the Son of the living God? What if his resurrection on Easter morning could and should radically change your life? I'm asking you to not stay on the sidelines and wash your hands and act as Pilate and pretend you can make no choice. I'm asking you tonight to consider making a choice of asking Jesus to come into your life, to believe in him, and to choose to follow him in his ways. That's as simple and as easy as just asking Jesus to come into your life. Just acknowledging the fact that you're not perfect. None of us are. Acknowledging that you've got a lot of ash in your life too. That not only have bad things happened to you, but you've been part of the bad things and you've done some of the bad things. Acknowledging that you're not perfect and you don't deserve anything, but that you can receive everything through Jesus' death on the cross. I believe that this Easter could be radically different for you. Your life, you could look back and it would never be the same by making a simple decision to believe in Jesus and to ask him to come into your life. There's no magic formula or special words to be able to pray or say. You can do it in your own way, but if you do, tell us about it. Tell us. Because it's not just a last step. It's not the end of a journey. It's the beginning of something fresh and new. Come in Discord afterwards. Stop by with one of our pastors and say, hey, I think I want to know more about Jesus. I think I want Jesus to be in my life. Or if you've already embraced him, use the link in the chat after !committed and just let us know. We just want to follow up with you. We just want to follow up with you and help you get started. Following Jesus is not a solo activity, it's multiplayer. We want to walk along inside that journey with you. And if you're here tonight and you're already a follower of Jesus and you're coming to Easter, the same question is asked of you. What will you do with Jesus? Will you be like the disciples? Like Peter? Like Judas? Are you a follower of Jesus, but you've been living a lot like Pilate, trying to keep Jesus out of your life recently? Trying to remain neutral towards him? Listen, all of us bring a lot of ash when we come to the cross. All of us do. We bring a lot of brokenness. We recognize we have had problems, but we're also part of the problem. When we come to Golgotha, when we come to Jesus on the cross on Friday, we come with ashes in our hand. We're not the solution. We're not the hero. So what will you do with Jesus this Easter? Will it be another Easter that just passes you by with a ham dinner and some pie? Another holiday with a couple of friends or maybe some family? Or will this be an Easter that's different for you as well? An Easter where you renew your commitment to Jesus, that you bring your ash to him and allow him to bring something beautiful and redemptive out of it. In fact, that's our apply it point. It's a little esoteric, a little elusive, but I like it. It's this: bring your ash to Jesus. I think all of us can identify with some of the brokenness of the disciples and the people in the narrative. I think all of us can kind of see it. Guys, if you're here tonight and you're a follower of Jesus, one of the most important things that you can do is admit and acknowledge your own brokenness. You cannot be free of it without recognizing that it's there. One of the first and most important things that you can do as a Jesus follower is to keep bringing that ash, that brokenness back to the cross. Tonight, we're going to close this portion of our service with the Lord's Supper. So if you're here, especially if you're new tonight and you're here with us, and you want to go grab some elements, we just say grab common elements. For me tonight, I have half a loaf of bread and a little bit of grape juice. For you, I don't know, this might be a Triscuit and some water or something. Whatever it is that you have around. We don't believe that the content of the elements is the important thing. It's the remembering of what Jesus did that's important. And we merely make a full circle because at the beginning of this message, I said it was Jesus who gathered with his disciples at the Last Supper to celebrate Passover. And it's at that supper that he instituted this, the Lord's Supper. Because as he was at that table, he broke bread. And when he did, he said, listen, my friends, this is my body given for you. In the future, when you eat it, do so in remembrance of me. And at the end of the night, after he had told them that someone was going to betray them and Judas was already off to do the deed, he took the cup. I said, this cup represents my blood. It's going to be a sacrifice for the sins of many. When you drink of it, do so in remembrance of me. And in many ways, for the last 2,000 years, the church has celebrated this simple and humble meal. It's interesting that Jesus did it at Passover, because it was a yearly meal so that the Jews wouldn't forget what God had done. A yearly meal so they wouldn't forget what God had done. And they always forgot. So Jesus says, this is a simple meal. It's not elaborate, but it's deeply symbolic. I don't want you to celebrate it once a year. I'm about to do something that you should celebrate every time you get together, so that you never forget it. So that when your children see it, you'll tell them what it means. So that when you celebrate it, you're bound together with other followers of me. And tonight we're spread across states and countries and thousands of miles. And as a church family, we come together with this simple meal of bread and juice to remember once again what Jesus will do for us on Golgotha, what he'll do for us on Friday, and what will happen on Sunday with the empty tomb. So my friends, I'm going to give us a few moments of silence. I'm asking you to take all of your ash to the cross. In other words, I'm going to ask you to silently confess. Do not come to this meal unprepared or unworthy. If you're not a follower of Jesus here, I'm going to ask you to abstain. Please don't take it. The Bible's really clear that if you take this in an unworthy manner, you might drink and eat a curse upon yourself. To be honest with you, I don't want a curse from God on you. And if you are a follower of Jesus, I also don't want you to eat it in an unworthy manner. So we're going to give you a couple of moments to go before the creator of the universe, your heavenly Father, and all of us collectively together in silence are just going to confess and bring before God the sin in our life and ask him for forgiveness. Amen. Friends, this is the body of Jesus, given for you. Let us eat it in remembrance of him. My brothers and sisters, this is the blood of a new covenant, poured out for the sins of us all. Let us drink it in remembrance of him. Let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever, Lord. Amen.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Sing praise. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. The God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation.
Jesus, for our sake you died. Oh, praise the Father, praise the Son, and praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not wane. By his blood and in his name, by his freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Sing praise, praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King